I'm Don Landis. I'm an arrogant alcoholic, which means I fit in this room perfectly. And if you were confused by that, I'm currently I have the honor and privilege of serving as the DCM for District 11 and Area 72 in Western Washington, and we have our last quarterly before our yearly assembly, and that is tomorrow in Kent, Washington. And would be remiss of me if I was not in attendance representing District 11, so I'm simply going to drive down to Kent after this and then go sit in a 12-hour business meeting, missing you desperately, I'm sure. I want to thank the committee for extending the invitation for me to come down and share my story with you tonight. It's, I'm one of those guys, I'm telling you, I'm not supposed to be here, a week doesn't go by where I'm just, not driving around, doing business, whatever, and I have that crystal clear thought, I don't drink whiskey anymore. And it just makes me laugh because it was never going to be that way. Because I always tried not to drink whiskey, and I always ended up drunk again. So it's not just an honor and a privilege to be asked to come up here and get a chance to tell my story. I think it's an honor and a privilege to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I really sincerely believe that, just to be able to go to meetings with people like you and enjoy the gift of sobriety one more day. A gift that for a long time I didn't think I wanted. And then once I wanted it, I knew I'd never have it. I knew I'd never make it in Alcoholics Anonymous. For God's sakes, I didn't even come here to get sober. I came here because I was in trouble. Imagine that, And to buy some time, figure out my next move, and get the heat off. That's why I came to AA. I certainly wasn't going to stay sober, but I heard that if you came to Alcoholics Anonymous, you could put the plug in the jug for a short time anyway. And I was going to be thrown out of the last family member that had anything to do with me. That's my older sister. And they were done with me. Where they're so done they can't look at you when they talk to you, where they're talking to you, but they're talking out of the side of their mouth. This just isn't working out for us, Don. You've really got to go. And I am an alcoholic. I'm a manipulator. I am not much, but I'm all I think about. I am self-centered in my core. I didn't miss a beat in that situation. I gave one of the greatest theatrical performances of my life. I turned on the waterworks, and I begged my sister for a 30th chance in the last 2 years I've been living with them. And, please don't throw me away. I've got nowhere to go. I'll go to AA and everything. And then I looked around to see who said the last part, And I played the recovery card, and if they pick it up, if they believe me, if they think I'm sincere, which I'm not, maybe I can buy some time. And that's why it's not important what brings you to Alcoholics Anonymous. Motives don't matter. What's important is what happens to you after you get here. And what happened for me is I walked into a little place in Southern California in Ventura County called the Simi Valley Alano Club. And the Simi Valley Alano Club had some old-timers holed up in there with a couple copies of the Big Book. And they didn't get a lot of new guys. And when I walked in, they descended on me like apes from the trees. And they were getting me sober that night, and just... I got a friend named Bob in Bellingham that says we should all show up in meetings and we should wear T-shirts with a picture of us the way we looked on our first day. And I think that's a really good idea because you got to understand, we clean up pretty well over here. And my sobriety date is 9/16/91. I'll be celebrating 17 years of sobriety in September. It's a huge deal for me. Every day is a huge deal for me. And my home group is the SOS Men's Group, and we meet on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. at St. James Presbyterian Church on 14th Street in the Fairhaven district of Bellingham. If you're ever in town, one of the guys want to come by and check out our men's stag. We have a great meeting. We're active there. A lot of unity in that group. Got a lot of good action going on. My sponsor's Dave P. Lives up in Blaine, Washington, a little suburb of Bellingham. And those things are essential for me staying sober on a daily basis. And when I walked into the Simi Valley Alano Club and these guys descended on me and they decided they were going to get me sober, I didn't look the way I look. I had hair down my back, I had a full beard. I'd been hitting it hard and fast for the last 10 years. I had lost the ability to speak the King's English. I kind of talked in grunts and clicks like, yeah. I'm a wannabe tough guy. I got my Ray-Bans on, and I got my hair in a ponytail, and I got my arms folded across my chest, just daring you to come talk to me, you know. And thank God for the old-timers in that group. Thank God that they saw through the bluster of a terrified man. Thank God they knew the game of alcoholism. Thank God they were able to look past that stuff, and everything about my deportment shouted, you better stay away from me. You don't want a piece of this. And they were welcoming, and they touched me, and they put their arms around me, and they said, are you new? What do you think? And it's funny, you know, I walked into AA September 16th, 1991, and it took a lot of work to get there, you know, doesn't it? I mean, I didn't go easily. I didn't go calmly. They didn't say, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, Don. I said, well, I'll take the easy way. You know, I would have done that at about 21 years old if I was smart enough to get here, but I wasn't. And it didn't start out that way. I had a love affair with the booze. I got to tell you, I threw my first drunk. This is not my first drink. I don't care about my first drink. It has no interest to me. But I am interested in my first drunk because that's when I got enough alcohol on board in one setting to get there. You know, because alcohol, as much as anything, it transports me. It takes me to the land of I don't care. And I get to step out easy, and the sharp edges become round, and I get better looking, and my friends, I like them more, and I like music more, and you'd be a fool not to want to date me, and I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I'll tell you, half an hour before I was drunk, I feel less than. I didn't have to come to AA to learn to do a 10th and 11th step inventory, because as a little kid, I laid in my bed at night reviewing my day, thinking about all the things I should have said or should have done. I'm selfish and I'm self-centered. I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. I have the classic examples of the ism long before I take the first drink growing up. I'm the kind of self-centered little alcoholic long before I drink that I'll get you in the corner and talk incessantly about myself for a half an hour straight. Realize I'm doing that. Say, wait a minute, that's enough about me. What do you think of me? And always feeling like I'm a day late and a dollar short, like I don't fit in, like I'm a square peg in a round hole. And I don't know how to explain that, and I certainly have nothing to compare it to. I think everybody's faking it. And it's a funny thing about growing up, you know. When you're a kid, pretty quick, you know, when you start school, they lay out a plan for you. And what they're trying to do is tell you that if you do these certain things and you excel at them, you're going to be fulfilled. And I got to tell you, I did it. I went to the right schools, and I took the right tests, and I played the right sports, and I dated the right women, and I excelled at all of it. And I did it with the guys that were doing that kind of stuff. And the funny thing about that is they loved it. They were saying, isn't this great, Donnie? Aren't we having a good time, Donnie? And I'm saying, yeah. But inside, in here where my soul lives, the truth is that stuff leaves me feeling strangely hollow, like an itch I can't scratch, like this is it. But I got nothing to compare it to until I throw my first drunk. And when I got enough, and my first drunk was Old English 800, and let me tell you, that's a fine malt beverage if there ever was one. You get every penny's worth with that stuff. And I was drinking in a place called the Hollywood Reservoir, which is a hillside above this concrete pond in the city of Hollywood where I grew up in. And I'm drinking this malt liquor with these guys I play high school basketball with, and I'm somewhere through that second can of malt liquor, and I had a feeling come over me that filled me from the inside out, from my toes to my head. And in that moment, everything changed. And yet nothing changed. I mean, these are my friends. These are my running mates. I really like these guys. But now suddenly, I love these guys. And I turned into a big emotional goober, and I started telling them about it. My first embarrassing, drunken soliloquy, you know, oh, you guys are the best. I love you guys. We're going to be together forever, man. You know, just hanging on them. And what's with Donnie, you know? And lighten up, big fella. And I'm listening to that rock music come out of that cheap stereo in that rickety car we drove up there, and I thought it was the greatest thing I had ever heard. Listen to the guitar, you know. And I'm looking down on this water in this concrete pond and the sunlight shimmering on it, and I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I experienced something I always experience when I drink. When I drink, I always start to think, and what I thought was I should get down to that water. We're on a hillside. It's about a 45-degree grade. And I decided to go down it, and I start walking down this hill, and then I'm walking kind of fast, and then I'm kind of jogging, and then my feet are like windmilling behind my ears, and then I fell, and it was like sky, earth, sky, earth, sky, earth, all the way down, and I slammed into this scrub oak, bam! And I'm an athlete, I have an athletic background, and I immediately knew I'm really going to be hurt. And I got up from that scrub oak and I checked myself out and I thought, no pain. Now, my first drunk, and I'm already acquiring valuable information that's going to serve me for the rest of my drinking career. You know, you drink enough, there's no pain. You go, you know, you guys that go to the gym and you throw the heavy iron and you say, you know, no pain, no gain. I have my own expression. No pain, no pain. And it was great. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, terrific. It was free. I wasn't picking up a tab. I wasn't getting any real trouble. I didn't have my mom standing in front of me crying her eyes out saying, don't you know you're killing yourself? I wasn't standing in courtrooms in front of judges trying to explain my latest event of outrageous behavior. I didn't have girlfriends hiding in closets because they're afraid they're going to get smacked around in my latest drunken rage. When I was 23 years old, you could have taken all those things and labeled them yet to be added to my story. And when I was 23 years old, if God Almighty walked into the bar I was drinking and sat down on the bar stool next to me and said, hey, Don, the next drink, the next one, it's going to pass you into a region where there's no return through human aid. You're going to have to go to Alcoholics Anonymous for the rest of your life or die a horrible alcoholic death. I'd have told God Almighty, he got the wrong guy because it's working for me. I'm going up the ladder at business. I'm making money. I'm dating up a storm. It's allowing me to feel anything I want, not feel anything I don't want. Now, that's not to say that my drinking in this part of my story isn't a problem for other people. I mean, it may be a problem for my landlord who's not getting his rent on time. It may be a problem for my girlfriend who I can't stay faithful to. It may be a problem for my employer who can't get 5 days a week out of me. But you see, it's not a problem for me until it's a problem for me. I can't tell you how many times I've had a girlfriend standing in front of me, crying her eyes out. Don't you know how I feel? Not really. I mean, I told this one girl, listen, honey, I'm drinking and you're watching. And I got to tell you, one's more fun than the other. So why don't you loosen up and have a drink? I just didn't understand it. And I never got belligerent. I never got angry. It's a lot easier to change a job, change a friendship, change a girlfriend, change a town, than it is to give up drinking. Why would you do that? Hey, why don't you mind your own business and you won't have to mind mine? It's easy to get that bluster up. And you know what? We don't hang out with the Boy Scouts. We're not doing this with the church choir. We find like-minded people. We find the people that are hitting it the way we hit it. If you're the kind of guy and you're running in my crew and it's Thursday night and it's 11:30 and you say, oh my God, it's 11:30. I guess I should get home. I got to work tomorrow. You're off the list. Because I've always been willing to ruin tomorrow for a couple of more hours of fun tonight. I like the guys when it gets to be about 2:30 in the morning and we got enough beer and we got enough whiskey left and we got enough outside issues left. Tijuana. We can catch the morning set at Tijuana. We can be on the water by the morning and we go. We don't make it, but we go. You know, we always left the driveway. We just never made it. But I like those guys. I like the guys that drunkenly say, that's a great idea. You know, those are my people. And I started singing my alcoholic song that we all sing. When it gets to be a problem for me, I'll knock it off. You know, don't worry about it. I got this one. And I meant it with every fiber in my being. And I'll tell you what, by the time I was 25 years old, the light went on. You know, every negative aspect of my life, every heartache, every failure, every plan I had put into action and failed to hit the finish line, right alongside that was a drink of alcohol. And I got it, the booze. The booze is killing me. For years, they've been talking to me about the booze, and I thought they had the wrong guy. And I had what the big book refers to for the first time in my story, without any justification, rationalization, framing, self-knowledge. It wasn't mom telling me, it wasn't the court telling me, it wasn't the arresting officer telling me, it wasn't the doctor who was stitching up my head and I didn't feel the needle and he thought that was kind of weird. It wasn't one of these people telling me I might have a problem with the booze. I had self-knowledge with nobody telling me that this thing was killing me, but I got a bigger problem than that. I hadn't been to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I hadn't read your big book. So I certainly hadn't got to the part that said for the real alcoholic, he will absolutely be unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. That's just crazy, isn't it? You know why? Because I'm a man. And you guys understand this. What do you do when you have a problem in your life, right? You just knock it off. Just knock it off. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You know, stop whining. What do you want us to call the wambulance? Come on. Get with it. Get with it. And I did what most of us do. I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous. I made the declaration. I told everybody I knew, I'm quitting drinking, so don't try to tempt me. And I didn't come to AA, and I didn't get a sponsor, and I didn't work your steps, and I didn't get a home group, and I didn't get involved in service. I didn't do any of the things that are suggested, and I quit drinking alcohol on my own. Thank you very much. For 2 weeks. And the crazy thing about that short 2 weeks is the outside stuff that they can see started looking better. Laundry started getting done, started showing up to work 5 days a week. And, all the people that knew and loved me the most, my girlfriend, my family, my employer, my friends, they're all saying the right things to me. They're going, man, we're glad you quit drinking. We were really worried about you. We thought we were going to lose you. We thought you were going to die. Man, I want to believe it's a good idea, so I'm saying that kind of stuff back to them. Hey, thanks for hanging in there with me. I'm working out again. I don't miss it at all. I'm more effective at work. I don't know what that was about, but that's all behind me now. Thanks for being there. But in here where my soul lives, where the truth is the only place that you can't hide it. It's that place where you can push the truth down as far as you want, but it comes up like cork in the ocean. It's the only place the truth can live, right there in the middle of your gut, right here, about 3 inches behind my belly button. And the truth is I desperately wanted to drink. That every day that goes by since my last drunk, I'm getting more irritable and restless and discontent and confused and baffled. Because for years you've been telling me that drinking's my problem, and now I've hit the point where I agree with you. And guess what? I'm not drinking. Somebody want to explain to me why I want to kill myself or kill somebody else? Somebody want to explain to me why I don't change my playmates or my playgrounds and I go to those same parties and I watch that guy walking across the room with a shot in one hand and a Heineken in the other, and I think, I want a shot in a Heineken, goddammit, I want a shot in a Heineken. You want to explain to me where I wake up every day wondering, what's this all about? What's this thing called life about? Because now all the color's gone out of my life. Now it's all black and white. It's going to be an endless seam day after day trying to do the right thing. And it's just, I get crazy. I'm getting crazier. I'm getting angry about it. And I don't know what happens to you, but I'm a real alcoholic. And a real alcoholic with recovery of their own, with no God, no intervention, no divine help. What happens to me is I finally drink again to preserve my sanity because I feel like I'm going crazy. And when I picked up that half pint after 2 weeks of my own program of recovery, I wasn't drinking to crash the car or lose the girl or lose the job. And I thought I was drinking to get the heat off, to take the edge down, to feel a little bit better. And I had to come to Alcoholics Anonymous to understand how cunning, baffling, and powerful this disease is. Because the reason I drank that half pint was to overcome a mental obsession beyond my human power. That what I bring to the game of life naturally is the same that everybody brings naturally. My instincts, my intellect, my emotions. And while these things will work very well in other areas of my life, in the game of alcoholism, they will leave me dead. And I don't know that, so I'm bringing a knife to a gunfight. I don't know that, so I think self-knowledge is the answer. I don't know that, so when I pick up that half pint after 2 weeks of my own program of recovery, I think it's my idea. And I don't understand that I've lost the power of choice where the drink is concerned. And I drink that half pint and I get the second half of our disease immediately. And I get the phenomenon of craving. And now a half pint's not going to do it. Now there's not enough booze in the world. And I get drunk because I always get drunk. And I make my peace with it. And what started for me at age 25 was an odyssey. It's the kind of thing you read about in chapter 3 every time you read our book and you read the beginning of chapter 3. Various vain attempts to control and enjoy my drinking. The feeling I was regaining control to find out I had lost even more control. The great obsession of every abnormal drinker. I just knew that if I just found the right combination, I'd be able to keep it all together and still drink. And I would get so close to that brass ring. I'd get going up in business. I'd get things going pretty good. And then I'd blow it all apart. And when I was about 27 years old, I remember I just gave up. I made a surrender. And it's not the surrender we require when you come into Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a surrender of the alcoholic that knows the booze has him down and knows he's never going to stop drinking and knows that he's going to die from it. And you just give up. And you say to yourself one day, you go, I guess this is how God made me. I'm a drunk. I guess some people are. Never would have thought this was going to be my lot in life, but doesn't matter how many jails I go to, doesn't matter how many cars I crash, doesn't matter how many hearts I break. I've been given every good reason to put down the booze, yet I keep drinking and I can't stop. So I better make my life smaller and just accept it. It's never going to end. And I start surrendering things to King Alcohol. I start surrendering a good job and a good relationship and the right to drive an automobile in the state of California and the right to live in a decent place and the right to have good friends and the right to have a little bit of money in your pocket and have a bounce in your step and a glint in your eye. And I turn all that stuff in for a spot on the 4th stool from the door in a bar in Rancho Cucamonga where I go in, where I walk down there every day after work and I get drunk until I can't speak the King's English, and then I stumble home. And I try to be drunk and in bed early enough so when the terrors hit me about 3 in the morning, I'll get up and have a couple of shots, go back to sleep, and then I can be to work at time because the job's always in jeopardy. And we don't always die in flaming car crashes, and we don't always live on the edge. And a lot of us don't have these dramatic stories. A lot of us have these sad, pathetic, ugly, dirty, smelly, drunken stories. I was a man that was afforded every opportunity when I was young to excel at the game of life, yet alcoholism left me broken and battered. And I got to tell you, I gave it everything I had. I pulled the big geographic, moved to Boston, Massachusetts, found out to my surprise they drink in Boston. I think they drink more. My story started to change there. I start getting violent. I start going into blackouts. You know, I love that, tonight we heard about people talking about, alcoholics talk about crossing a line. If I ever do that, I remember being 21 years old and there was a guy we called Dimebag Dave for various reasons. And I was living with this guy named Ronnie, and Ronnie had gone out on a date that night. We had a big party at the house, and I'd gone to bed and passed out. And Ronnie tells a story that he's driving home, and all he's thinking is, God, don't let anybody be passed out in my bed. God, don't let anybody be passed out in my bed, because Ronnie's 3 sheets to the wind. And he comes in, and there's a pile of bodies like there always are at the house after the party. It's about 3 in the morning, and he opens up the door to his bedroom, and he hears water running, and he's got a water bed, and he thinks, great, somebody punctured my water bed. He flips the light on, there's Dimebag Dave just whizzing all over the water bed. And he starts screaming, Dave, for God's sakes, Dave! And Dave just looks over his shoulder and goes, hey, Ratty, and finishes up, walks out of the room. And when they told me the story, I remember thinking, man, if I ever do anything like that, I'll quit drinking. 5 years later, I come out of a blackout because my girlfriend is screaming, you're doing it again! And I'm trying to flush the linen hamper, it's just... That's the ugly part of alcoholism. And it really helps if you're in a relationship with another alcoholic and they're drinking too, because you can just blame each other in the morning. Well, I didn't wet the bed. It must be you. You and that small bladder you have, ma'am. But then when you're on your own and the bed's wet, you go, damn this thing. I come back from Boston. And in true alcoholic fashion, I believe alcoholics are like cats thrown out of a second-story window. They make a lot of noise, they land right on their feet. Boom. I landed right on my feet, 3-piece suit, in the interview, get the job. Get the best job I ever had in my life, and it's going to be different this time. And it was for about 6 months. Then the owner of the company made a fatal error, came up to me one day, and he put his arm around my shoulders, and he said, Don, I want you to know something. You've done a great job here. Now, I don't know what you hear when somebody says something like that to you if you're an active alcoholic, but what I heard was, Don, you've done a great job here. You should really slack off. Because if I proved it to you once, why would I do it again? And the old behavior comes in. I start missing work. I start showing up drunk, and they start talking to me about my drinking. And in January of 91, something had to happen for a guy like me to finally start taking a look at himself. And I had a boss walk in the office, and he said, you got a minute? I said, yeah. And he says, you're fired. You're out of here, which is no big deal. I've been fired lots of times. I mean, I got fired for a fight I got in with a salesman. They love to fire me for attendance. That's my personal favorite. But he said, you're fired. You're a drunk. We've talked to you about it. You're never going to stop. Get out. And the 12 and 12 says my outstanding characteristic is defiance. So I got my alcoholic bluster up. How dare you, after all I've done for you? Called up my sister in Simi Valley, California, and played the victim card. Because I'm not just an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic/victim. You know, and most of us are. Most of us come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and we have these horrible, horrible childhoods. I'll tell you, the longer I stay sober, the better my childhood gets. It's the funniest thing. But when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had that stuff hardwired, the victimization. I'd walked in, and I'll tell you, and I have 2 childhood stories. I got the one I dragged into Alcoholics Anonymous with me, and it is tragic. I'm telling you, if I tell it just right, somebody in here is going to feel sorry for me. And that was always my intention when I told that story. This story about my mom's alcoholism and the physical abuse and being 7 years old and having to walk past my mom naked in the pull-out couch with some guy I don't know, my latest uncle, to go get some cereal and go to work. And that's no way for a kid to grow up. And my dad got up off the couch when I was 2 years old and said he was going out for a pack of smokes, and we never saw him again. He deserted the family. And then he had the audacity to get married and have 3 more kids and stay married and get it right the second time. More evidence I'm not enough. And when I came to AA and I told you that story, I wasn't being delusional. I wasn't in denial. I had been telling that sad story for so long it had become my truth. But a funny thing happens when you come to AA and you get a sponsor and they take you kicking and screaming through the steps and you get to the 4th and 5th step of the inventory process. Then what happened for me is simply what the book talks about. I got down in black and white what really happened. And it was amazing to me, the things I had conveniently forgotten on my way to Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a mom that got up early, got 3 kids ready for school, got them off to school, took 2 buses to work, 2 buses back to pick up those kids, to bring them home, to put food on the table. She didn't split. But yet when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was filled with spite and rage and venom for that woman. A disease of perception. I had to write down an inventory to remember what a great mom I had. I had athletic coaches that took an interest in me. What happened is when I did that inventory, I saw that I had every opportunity to excel at this game of life that anybody could have been afforded, and it wasn't their fault. And the important thing about letting them off the hook, you see, if it really is their fault, if it really is that family, that neighborhood I came from, that dad that deserted us, that physical abuse, that alcoholism, if it really is their fault, I'll never recover. Because what we got here is a program for the individual. What we got here is a way to stick our head up above the hedge. And for many of us, for the first time in my life, many of us are like this, take a hard look at ourselves in the mirror and realize that the quality of our lives is based on the quality of our actions. I remember my grand sponsor used to say to me when I was new, when I talk about that bad stuff that happened when I was a kid, he'd say, "You know what, kid, I don't see your daddy around here. I just see you, and your butt's dying from alcoholism. You might want to stop thinking about daddy and start thinking about Donnie." And they told me the truth about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll tell you, if one more person had put their arm around me and said, "Oh, that's terrible. Oh, you poor boy," I'd be dead. Nobody loved me till I could love myself, I'll tell you that. They loved me until I could love somebody else. That's what we do here. Nobody co-signed my stuff. What they told me was, that's stuff, and we're not co-signing it. And I'm so grateful for that. I played the recovery card. I ended up back in my sister's warm bosom again. My poor sister has been through so much stuff with me. And she tells me, "Don, you can come stay at my house, but if you drink, you're out of my house." And I told my sister, "I won't drink. I promise." Because I can lie to the Pope by this time. It's not a big deal. And I drank every day in that house for 7 months until I got sober. And if you don't know how you do that when they're watching you, well, maybe you're not a sneaky rat like I am. I got no problem drinking around your schedule. I'm unemployed. What time do you go to work in the morning? 7 a.m.? Bar's open. And you need to hear this. At the end of my drinking, I'm not drinking so my friends mean something more to me, so the music sounds better, so I can kid myself I'm better looking than I am. I'm doing oblivion drinking. I'm doing light switch drinking. I'm getting the whiskey on board hard enough and fast enough so I can get drunk, so I can go into a blackout, so I can pass out in this room I'm mooching off of my sister, so I can come out of the blackout to meet the hideous 4 horsemen. Terror, frustration, bewilderment, despair. They sit on the end of this bed that I'm mooching off of my sister, and they wait for me to come up from my latest drunk, and then they talk to me in my own voice about my life, and they ask me questions. Who are you going to hurt today, Don? Who are you going to rip off today, Don? And then they say statements. Every good thing you've ever had, you've torn it to shreds. You've hurt everybody that's ever come near you. Every good thing that's ever come your way, you've torn it apart. What are you going to do today, Don? I don't know what you do with a head like that on hangover mornings, but I just took another pull off the jug. And I swore it was going to go down that way. I got an unemployment check in September of 91. I went up to my brother-in-law, Larry, and I said, Larry, I got my check. I'd like to borrow your car and go cash it. And Larry asked me a very unusual question. He said, Don, will you be coming back? I thought I used to borrow my family members' cars and return them late. My first sponsor in AA taught me that I stole them. It's only returning it when you come back when you say you'll be back. And I had gone out on little vacations that summer a few times, and I got right in Larry's face. Larry, I can't believe you just said that to me. You know, the last time this happened, I opened my heart to you. I told you how sorry I was. You know, things aren't really going great in my life, Larry, and I don't really need this crap right now. And he felt terrible. He pulls the keys out, and I grab the keys, and I'm so grandiose. I'm walking out to his car from his house, and I'm mooching the room off, and I'm thinking there better be gas in it. I go down to the liquor store to cash my unemployment check, because that's where alcoholics of my type cash their unemployment checks. And I'm standing in line, and I have what the big book refers to as the thought that precedes the first drink. And what that always sounds like in my head is, what's in a half pint? And I got the half pint, and I drank that in the parking lot, and the half pint got lonely, so we drank another half pint. And then I thought, you know, I can be to the valley and back in 40 minutes and go, they'll never miss me, and I'm gone. 3 days later, I'm driving up the hill to face that family. You know, one more time, I've taken their hope, their faith, and their trust, and I've torn it to shreds. And you need to hear this. Driving up the hill to face that family I'd done over one more time, I love them no less than I love them at this very moment. And I love my family tremendously. But I got a problem. I can't serve two masters. I only got time to serve one. And that's King Alcohol. And you get between me and a drink, it's nothing personal. It's almost businesslike. I'm getting to the drink. I'm going around you, I'm going through you, I'm manipulating you, I'm telling you what I think you want to hear, but bet your bottom dollar I'm getting to the drink. But I know nothing of alcoholism, so I say things like, I'm sorry. I don't mean to treat you this way. I don't know why I did it. Can you give me another chance? And I'm as confused and scared and sad as they are. And we're a family falling apart. When I was back in LA, my mother heard that my drinking was out of control at one point. She knew that I didn't have long, and it was Christmas time, and my mom wanted to see me one more time, and she was afraid that I wasn't going to make it another year. So my mom, lives on a very meager salary in Lexington, Kentucky, bought an airline ticket for her baby boy, you know, and said, maybe I can talk to him, maybe I can see him, maybe I could put my arms around him and it'll be okay. And my mom bought me this ticket. And I went to a bar the night before I was supposed to fly to Lexington, and I fell in love, and I ended up oversleeping, and I missed the flight. And you'd think that I would have picked up the phone and called my mom and said, Mom, I'm really sorry, but I missed the flight. I won't be coming for Christmas. But that's not the kind of alcoholic I am, because that would have made me feel bad, and it's all about me, so I don't make the call. So now it's raining, and it's cold, and it's winter in Lexington, Kentucky. They call it sleeting. It's mostly ice. And she gets in that rickety car that she owns, and she drives that 45 minutes down to the airport to go pick up her son. But she couldn't be happier. She doesn't even notice the weather, because she's going to see her baby boy, who she loves more than anything in the world. And she goes in that tarmac at the Louisville airport, and she sits there, and she's got her umbrella, and she's cold, and she's got holes in her shoes because she doesn't have any money. And she watches people get off the plane, and well, maybe that's him. Oh, he's not tall enough. Oh, maybe that's him. And pretty soon all the passengers are off that little puddle jumper, and finally the crew's getting off the plane. And as the last stewardess is walking by, my mom grabs her by the arm, and she says, there's got to be somebody else on the plane. She goes, no, I'm sorry, dear. Everybody's off of the plane. And the stewardess walks away, and my mother turns her back and walks back to her car. And she gets in the car, and she sits there because she can't start the car because she's crying so hard, because she knows she's lost me to the bottle, and she knows that I'm going to die. And she knows there's nothing left to do. When I was 6 months sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was getting ready to start making my family amends. And I'm the kind of alcoholic that's so grandiose, and my life is so hard, and it's so bad, and look at all these terrible things that happened to me through my drinking, that I don't have the ability to understand that I hurt other people. I didn't hurt anybody but myself. It sounds familiar. When you're new, we sing that song, don't we? I didn't hurt anyone but myself. And my sponsor, being a wise man, sentenced me to one meeting of Al-Anon a week. He said, you will say that you are a visitor. You will let them know that you're in AA. You will not share. You will not show off. You will sit there and you will listen, and you will do that until you start reporting back to me what I want to hear. And he wouldn't tell me what that was. And about 3 months later, he said, okay, now you're starting to get it. And what I was able to do in those Al-Anon meetings is I was able to sit in there and hear about the disease of alcoholism and what it did in other people's lives and what they were doing. And what I really saw was the absolute love that people have for the alcoholic that's in their life, and that they would do anything to make them okay, and that they absolutely know that they've lost them, and it's going to take a power greater than themselves to do anything about it. And I would hear the pain in the voices, and I would see it, and I would see my family in that. And when I made the amends to my family, my sponsor had me do it by the book, but he also added a little twist to it. He said, you're going to make an appointment, and they're not going to know as much about Alcoholics Anonymous as you do, hopefully. So they're going to be kind of taken off guard. And you're going to go in there, and you're going to talk about your perception of how you have damaged them. And an apology is not an amends. That's a very small aspect of what we do in the 9th step. But you're going to ask them what you can do to make this right. And then you're going to ask them with their permission if you can make another appointment, because it's very important that they have the opportunity to tell you how you have affected them, and they will not be prepared to do that. They will say, oh, it's okay, we're just so glad you're not drinking. Oh, it's okay, you know, we know you didn't mean that stuff. It was the booze. And Don, you need to understand that alcohol didn't make you what you were, it exposed you for what you were. So you need to ask for an appointment. And I would make those appointments, and I would go back to my family that had time to think about how my behavior had affected them over the years. And I thought it was going to be about stealing the cars and stealing the money and missing the graduations and breaking their hearts, and I was wrong. My older sister said to me, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like when the phone rings after 11 p.m. any night of the week and you know that it's you. You know you're dead. You know that it finally happened. You don't know what it's like to watch somebody you love as much as I love you and watch their life deteriorate right in front of my eyes, and when I try to bring it up to you, you keep telling me how great you're doing. The worse it got, the better you said you were doing. You don't know what it's like to know that the person you love as much as you, my beautiful baby brother, is going to die and there's nothing I can do. You don't know what it's like. And I didn't, but I got it. And I'm so grateful for the family groups of Al-Anon, and I'm so grateful for the amends process, not just for me, but for my family, to give us some healing, where we don't close the door on that stuff and pretend it didn't happen, and we don't blame 6 inches of whiskey in a rot glass. We blame the way we treated each other, and we live differently today. And I try to be an example of Alcoholics Anonymous in all my affairs, and you taught me how to do that. My first sponsor in AA told me, you are not a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, you are a representative of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you understand that, you will act differently when you're not with us. He said it was absolutely essential that I understood that I might be the only example of a big book anybody ever saw. When I walked into my family's house, when I stole their car the last time before I got sober, I found out my sister wanted to report the car stolen, or my brother-in-law wanted to report the car stolen, and my sister had negotiated him down to a missing persons report. And the Simi Valley police were on their way up to do the follow-up work. Now, I don't know if you've ever been up for 3 days drinking and doing other things, but the police usually aren't who you want to talk to. I had warrants for my arrest in 2 counties, so I start yelling at my sister, I got warrants, I'm going to jail. Thanks a lot, because now it's her fault. I go outside of their house to wait for the police because I don't want the interview to go on in front of the family. I have no idea what I'm going to be saying, but I'm fairly certain I'll be lying. And the black and white rolls up, and on the side of the black and white it says K9 unit. And I think, great, they brought the dog. Like I'm in any shape to make a run for it, you know. And the cop gets out and he starts asking me those hard, tough questions. They are trained professionals after all, like, where were you? And most of what I remember is illegal, so I'm making up a story about a bachelor party that got out of control, and he's looking at my eyes really hard because they're like Chinese road maps and they're rolling up in my head, and that makes me nervous, so I break his gaze, and he breaks with me, so now we're talking and dancing, and my hands are wet. I don't feel good. I just want to distract him for a minute. I see the dog in the back seat, and I go, hey, is that your partner? And he says, why, yes, it is. And he walks over, and he opens the door, and this dog gets out, German Shepherd, not a hair out of place, like a Rin Tin Tin reincarnate. And with no prompting on my part, he starts to relay facts to me about the dog's life. The dog is 3 years past mandatory retirement. They can't retire him. He's too good. The dog has participated in more arrests than any dog in the history of Ventura County. The dog has participated in more arrests and rescues than any dog in the history of Ventura or Los Angeles County. This dog was so phenomenal that the officers took a collection out of pocket to send him over to Europe for international competition where he kicked butt on German Shepherds, right? Yeah. And I said to the cop, I said, "That's a phenomenal dog you have there, sir." And this thought flew in the back of my mind, the kind of thought the minute you think it, you know it's the truth. You want to deny it, but you know it's the truth. And what the truth was is this dog had done significantly more with his life than I had done with mine. And I hated that dog. When I was courting my wife, Eileen, I told her that story. She said, "Yeah, the dog had a collar and his tag said winner, and you had a collar and your tag said loser." So I married her. I know how to get even. Love like that's hard to find. And I walk back in the house and I play the recovery card and I end up in AA, and my family doesn't believe I'm going to get sober. My first 2 weeks in Alcoholics Anonymous, my family was taking me to AA and picking me up from AA. You know how that makes you feel when you look the way I look and you get in your older sister's car at the end of the night and she's driving you home and she says, "So, Donald, what'd you learn in AA tonight?" You know? Just embarrassing. And I didn't particularly like AA. I don't like your slogans. They're confusing. They're quaint, you know, one day at a time, easy does it, live and let live. What is all this about? My favorite, this old guy comes up to me, my first day in AA, and he goes, "You know, kid, if you don't drink, you won't get drunk." And I thought, oh, you must be the president. But I'll tell you, before I had a chance to get out the door and go kill myself drinking, which is exactly what should have happened to me, God working through the members of Alcoholics Anonymous intervened in my life. Let me tell you something. There's a quaint little thing that goes around AA, and I've heard it since I got sober, and I'm going to tell you I vehemently oppose it. I think we need to stop saying it, and this is what we say. I can't get anybody drunk, and I can't get anybody sober. It's pretty goddamn convenient in my opinion. Because I'll tell you who got me sober. Because long before God could get me sober, long before I had a God of my own understanding, long before I had worked your 12 steps of recovery and gotten through halfway through the 9th step where I had that psychic change, where I was placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected, where the drink problem seemingly had been removed, where I was no longer interested. And if tempted, I recoiled as from a hot flame. And my new attitude was given to me freely. Long before that happened for me, men in Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life. Because somebody had to save me for the program to save me. And Ben came up to me, and a big guy named Lou I brought a little guy named Mark E up to me, and he said, "Hey, Don, this is Mark. Mark will be your sponsor." And we sat down and we had our first baby sponsor interview. And Mark told me he wasn't going to have me do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous he wasn't doing himself. And that sounded completely reasonable until I found out he went to 14 meetings a week. Never said no to an AA request. And his idea of a good time is one of you hits a tough spot in the road. You call up Mark 1:30 in the morning. Mark will get dressed, come over, and help talk you through it. He used to say, to the extent that I'm willing to be inconvenienced for my fellow alcoholic, that's the extent that I walk with God. So I got a spiritual zealot on my hands. And he got me busy in Alcoholics Anonymous. He told me what meetings I would be going to. He told me I would have a job at every meeting. He said, we call them commitments around here. You'll have a little job. You'll be cleaning up, or you'll be setting up, or you'll be making coffee, or you'll be putting out literature. Because, Don, if you go to a meeting on a regular basis and you don't have a commitment there, you're a visitor. Around here, gratitude's an action. It only becomes your meeting if you're willing to do a little job and say thank you and be a part of. So, I mean, you want to know, if you're newer, how long does Alcoholics Anonymous take? I wanted to know, how long does this take? Well, I can give you the answer, 30 days. It's exactly how long it took in my case. Not to get well, but that's when Alcoholics Anonymous reared its beautiful head in my life. I'm 30 days sober. 30 days earlier, I'm talking to cops outside my house. 30 days earlier, my family wants nothing to do with me. 30 days earlier, I can't go a day without taking a drink of whiskey. 30 days later, I haven't had a drink of whiskey. I got a new host of friends. I got a guy I call sponsor that I've already told stuff I swore I was going to take to the grave. I come home from my second AA meeting that night, and there's my sister in her kitchen with a little cupcake and a candle and a flame on it saying, hey, I know you guys get cakes when you turn a year sober. but I know you're 30 days sober today. And for you, that's like a year. Happy birthday. And she's crying. I haven't even worked my steps yet. I don't have God of my own understanding. And Alcoholics Anonymous jumped all over me and snuck into my house and started healing my family without my permission. My sponsor started healing my family without my permission. I'm 3 months sober. He goes, so what do you do exactly for that family that's being so kind that they're letting you stay there while you get sober after all you've done to them? I said, well, I don't drink. He goes, that's mighty big of you. Well, I'm paying them rent. Not much, I bet. Well, not much. I have a lot of amends to make. He said, I want you to go to your sister and I want you to ask her if there's anything you can do for her because you really appreciate everything she's doing for you. I said, okay. So I go up to my sister and I think, clean out the garage or something. And my sister thinks about it a second and goes, well, you could paint my house. I said the typical newcomer thing, your whole house? Well, I've got to talk to my sponsor because now I'm big on that, right? So I go tell my sponsor what this crazy sister of mine thinks I'm going to do. And my sponsor goes, is she going to buy the paint? And I go, well, I assume. He goes, you're getting off easy. Paint her house. And I'll tell you, I worked full time. I went to AA at night, and on the weekends I painted my sister's house. When I got home from meetings, I had a little paint shop set up in the garage, and I was painting all the doors. I'd taken them off the hinges. And the funny thing is, I thought I was doing that for my sister. Isn't that crazy? Because by the time that job came down, whatever was wrong between me and my sister wasn't fully repaired, but it had been greatly repaired. And I learned something very early in my sobriety about the amends that's actually in the book, but I had learned because my sponsor made me do something for somebody I'd hurt. There's a word in the book in the amends process. It's used in two different places, and the word's demonstration. In the first place, it says, our man will be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill than our talk of spiritual discoveries. And the other thing, it says, if somebody throws us out of his office, it shouldn't matter. We've made our demonstration. It's water over the dam. Now, the interesting thing about that is my sister was more interested in a demonstration of my goodwill. That's what healed her. Not the fact I wasn't drinking, not the fact I said I was sorry, not the fact I was going to AA. I painted her house. It was an act of love. I was able to do something. And when I look at AA and the time that I've spent here, and the time, I'm telling you, do you want to know? Here's the secret of the universe if you're a married guy. Somebody else turned me on to it. I'll give it to the married guys. You're not going to believe this. It works. You're going to think I'm crazy. When your wife, who I'm sure is a wonderful, kind, saintly person, is being, let's say, perhaps difficult, and you find it necessary for her own good to point out this behavior and probably give her a suggestion on what she could be doing differently because that would make her happier. Now, I know that we've all done that from time to time, and for some reason it doesn't work really well. But this guy said to do this the next time I was getting into my wife and we couldn't get along. He goes, ask her to sit down on the couch with you and tell her that you really need to rub her feet and then rub her feet for half an hour and don't say a word. And I said, well, you definitely need a blood test because you ain't sober if you just said that to me. And one day it got bad enough at home. Isn't it funny when it gets bad enough we're willing to try anything? And my wife doesn't even want to talk to me. And I go, listen, we need to sit down on the couch. You need to give me your damn feet and I need to rub them. And she said, okay. And she sat down on the couch, I rubbed her feet for half an hour, and I won't tell you the rest of the story, but it was pretty good. So now we find out that the amends is an action also. Alcoholics Anonymous is not a spectator sport. You got to get in, you got to get dirty, and you got to make mistakes. And that's what my sponsor told me. He goes, you're going to make mistakes, Technicolor mistakes, and we're all going to laugh at you. But don't worry, we're going to make them too, and you can laugh at us. Remember, Don, we're not laughing at you. We're laughing near you. I had a great sponsor. I'm 30 days sober, and he goes, is there any reason other than laziness that you're not working? And I thought about it, and I said, well, yeah, actually, I'm collecting unemployment from the state of California. What a mistake. You know, you want to piss your sponsor off. Have a sponsor that swings a hammer for a living about 60 hours a week, goes to 14 meetings a week, and then tell him you don't have to work because you're collecting unemployment. Man, I'd never seen him mad before. His eyes got all red. You You ever seen somebody so mad they can't talk? They start and everything they're going to say is inappropriate, so they catch themselves. You know, Don, I just want to, Don, listen, the point is, you know. And finally he stammered out, you're going to call the state of California tomorrow, and you're going to tell them you no longer require their help. And I got to tell you, 30 days sober, I'm at the turning point. Because I'm thinking that's my money. This guy doesn't have my best interest at heart. You know? But I was given a gift when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and the only reason I call it a gift is I didn't have it before I got here, and I can't explain it. I'm always the kind of guy, you can tell me the perfect thing to do, and my little pea brain will start arguing with it. Always. When I came to AA, for whatever reason, this guy called sponsor, he would tell me to do things I've got to tell you I would never do. And I didn't argue. I didn't agree with it, but I had this intuitive knowledge, just a little bit, that said I don't have the luxury of fighting one more thing in my life. If I fight one more thing in my life, I'm going to be dead. So I called up the state of California and I said, I'll no longer require your assistance. They said, oh, did you get a job? And I said, no, but I'll be looking. And they said, we thought you were looking. And I said, I mean looking harder. So I'm going to go back into aerospace where I worked most of my business career because I got a couple of contacts left. And I tell my sponsor, you know, I need to make some big money because I'm going to pay back. I got to pay back all that money. I owe the IRS 80 grand, all this other stuff. And he said no. Actually, he said no 3 times. He said no, no, no. He said, no, Don, if you go get the big job, you'll make the big money, and then your ego won't be smashed, and then you'll drink again, and you'll die, and it won't really matter. No, Don, for you, we need something humbling that won't get in the way of you attending meetings. So he said, I see on your resume that you've never worked with your hands. And I said, nope, barely know which end to hold a hammer. And he said, fascinating. And next day I came into the clubhouse, and I found out he got me a job working construction as a laborer on a framing crew. Now, I would love to tell you at this point in my story that at that point I found out my true calling in life was to work with these. Nothing could be further from the truth. I was terrible at that job. I was awful. I had a nickname on the job site, the Bleeder, you know. I talk a lot about sponsorship because the truth is I can't take any credit for my recovery. You know, I've had 5 sponsors in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had Mark when I got sober in Simi Valley, and I moved to the Pacific Group in West Los Angeles, and I had a guy named Glenn there for 2 years, and I had Robert for 9 years, and then I moved up here to the Pacific Northwest, and I started with one guy and it didn't work out, and I've been with Dave P. for a couple of years, and I owe my life to those guys. And let me tell you why I think sponsorship works so well for a guy like me. I got to tell you, I got a veil that hangs in front of my face. I know you can't see it, but trust me, it's there. And it seems to distort my view of reality, you know, and it seems to be made up of my wants, my fears, and my desires. My sponsor just doesn't have the veil about my life. He may have the veil about his life, which is why he has a sponsor, but he seems to be able to see my life clearly. But I do believe this, if the steps don't produce that psychic change and God isn't all powerful, I mean, what's the point? I mean, the truth is my thinking has changed here. I'd say about 90% of the time, I'm right on the money. It's that 10% I don't know about. And isn't it funny, they taught me something in my first 30 days in Alcoholics Anonymous that takes care of that too. They said, just don't make any major decisions without running it by your sponsor. And I continue to do that today. And I'll tell you, 90% of the time we talk about something, he goes, well, sounds like you thought it through, sounds like you prayed about it, sounds like you got a good plan, go ahead and do it. But about 10% of the time, he says, let me ask you something, Don. Did you think of this on your own or did you have help? You know? And that makes a huge difference in my life. I don't shoot my foot off anymore. And it's not all cake and candy out there. I remember when Eileen and I got engaged and she was having some health problems, and one day I swung by her apartment. I had this crazy sponsor that said, you can't live together till you're married, you know, which is ridiculous because like we're sleeping together like rabbits, and you know, I'm like leaving her house on Sunday night to drive an hour to where I live so I can drive by her house on my way to work the next morning. And I'm doing this going, this is crazy. I'm 34 years old. This is nuts. Why would I do that? Let me tell you, before I got into Alcoholics Anonymous, I'd been in a lot of relationships. I was 0-7. That was my track record. And I figured, what the hell? How bad could this guy do at running my relationship? And I'm still married 12 years, so there you go. And I'm not doing it. I'm telling you, it's all AA and direction. But I swing by her house to say hi, and she's in a lot of pain, so we take her down to the ER, and they do an MRI, and they find out she's got this big fibroid tumor wrapped around her uterus, and it was like, they walked out, they looked at the MRI, they picked up the phone, they called the surgeon, and she had surgery the next morning. And it's major surgery. And we're getting married, and we're going to start a family. And no, we're not, because you're not going to be able to have kids after this. And my wife got handed that in about an hour. And she was devastated, and she had to go into surgery with that kind of emotional state. And she was really scared. And I watched them take her away. And I stayed at the hospital till she came out of surgery, until she was awake in her room. And I prayed the entire time. And I didn't pray for the outcome. It's the hardest praying I've ever done in my life, because I wanted to pray that she'd be okay. And I wanted to pray that she'd be fine. And I wanted to pray that she'd make it. But I'd been here long enough to know I can't play God. And when I ask God for things that are specific, I place him in a position of being a butler. And I don't need a butler. I need a higher power. It was the hardest praying I ever did. I said, God, whatever your will is in this, I will accept it. But please, God, know that I love this woman, and I love her a lot. And I remember when we went through that, and Eileen crying, going, you don't have to marry me. I know how much you want kids. You don't have to marry me. And I said, I got to tell you, honey, that's not why I'm marrying you. And I don't play God today, and I don't know why this happened. I'm just so glad you're still here. And we don't know what God's path is for us. And maybe because we're not going to have kids, maybe we'll be able to do other things. And in that ability that you gave me as members of Alcoholics Anonymous to look at anything and understand, I don't have to understand everything for it to be okay. I don't have to understand everything while it's happening for it to be okay, because I don't have to run the show today. I got my gift when my wife made it through that surgery. And she had a long road to hoe with that, with the emotions associated with that. And we got to go through that together. I'm going to tell you a quick story, and then I'm going to sit down, so you don't think I'm too spiritual. When I was, we had been married a few years. I guess I was probably 8 years sober. And we're a couple of loser street kids, and I'd been working on paying off the IRS, been sending the IRS every spare nickel I had for 5 years. And Eileen had this great job at UCLA, and they had a first-time home buyers program. And I don't know if they got the paperwork wrong or what, but we qualified for a loan, and we became homeowners. Now, you need to hear this if you're sitting out in the audience. When somebody says something like this and I'm listening, I think, oh, God, don't turn AA into a self-help program. This ain't Tony Robbins. I don't want to hear about your house story. But let me finish, so stay with me. Because the truth of the matter is, I wouldn't have told anybody in AA, but down here where that evil part of me lives, I thought to myself, my reward. I've been going to AA for 8 years every night. I've never said no to an AA request. I've done everything my sponsors asked me to do. You get a house if you do that. I would have never said that to anybody. But that's what I felt like. My ego stepped right in and took credit for all of it. No God, no AA, no gratitude. Me, moi, look what I did. And then I found out I was wrong. Isn't that funny? God always shows me he'll use me for what he wants me to be used for, whether I think it's a good idea or not. 30 days after we get this house and we move in, we get a call from Loma Linda University where my wife's father has fallen. They've taken him to, and it don't look good. We go out to Loma Linda University, and you need to understand, I do not like my wife's father. My wife's father, when my wife went through her own life-threatening situation, she was corresponding with him because they were estranged by letter only. And her sponsor said, you need to write your father and let him know you're having this surgery and that you got through it and that you're recovering, but it's a bad deal. He needs to know. He wrote back, what do you expect after your kinky lifestyle? Well, I wanted to go out to his home in San Bernardino and just explain things to him. Just one spiritual guy laying out the facts. And my sponsor said I couldn't do that, but I don't think I like this guy very much. And when we got married and we asked him to come and give my wife away, he said, you know what, I like our relationship the way it is. I don't want to be in your wedding. I don't want to know your husband. I don't want to be a part of your life. So I don't think I like this guy very much. And we go out to Loma Linda, and I got to watch my wife be the greatest example of Alcoholics Anonymous that I've ever seen, because Alcoholics Anonymous boiled down as love and service. And I watched her walk in, and they found that he had cancer, and he had cancer all through his body, and he had 6 to 8 weeks to live. And they said the best choice is hospice, We can put him into affordable hospice. He won't feel any pain. He'll have good care there, and it'll be all right. My wife walked me into the hallway, and she broke into tears, and she said, I don't want him to die with strangers. And I wanted him to die with strangers. And she said, I don't know what we're going to do. We don't have any money. We don't know anybody. We just moved in this house. We're totally overwhelmed, but I don't want him to die with strangers. And I said to my wife, honey, we're members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't know how this is going to be right, but I know if we just say yes and we take it on, that our friends will help us figure it out. Let's take him home. And then I looked around to see who had said it. And we took this man home. And my wife was loving and kind and sweet and doting on her father that had been so rough and so hard on her. And she was the greatest example of love I'd ever seen. And while my actions were clean and we traded off meetings and I changed his diapers and I gave him baths and I made his meals and I read to him, I felt nothing inside. And I felt like a spiritual phony. I called my sponsor, Robert C., up, and I said, Robert, why's it got to be so hard? I feel like such a phony. I got nothing for this guy, Robert. I mean, I got nothing. And he goes, I don't know, Don. Maybe you'll find out somewhere in the process. How are your actions? I go, my actions are clean. I'm right there. I'm doing everything I can for him and my wife. He goes, well, that's all you can do. Maybe the feelings will follow. And once again, my sponsor said something to me that I thought, yeah, that's it, hon. That's all you got for me. He doesn't understand either. And then one night my wife went to a meeting. This used to happen. John would be quiet. He'd be all morphined up all day, wouldn't make a peep. The minute the front door closed, he'd be like, Don, Jesus! Leave me alone. About 2 weeks before John died, I walked into the bedroom, and John was in horrible shape. I don't know if you've ever witnessed somebody die from cancer. It's a horrible thing. My understanding and pity goes out to you. I've been through it. And John was down to about 105 pounds. He's a man my size. He's emaciated. He's very sick, and he's coming down to the end. But somehow he got himself to a sitting position on the bed, which was shocking to me. And he's patting the bed next to him, the spot next to him, and he wants me to sit down. And I'm like, oh, no. And I started thinking about you. I started thinking about Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Okay, sit down, Don, sit down. And I sit down, and I'm next to him, and I'm stiff as a board, you know, and then John reaches over and he grabs my thigh, and he's got a death grip. You can feel the fear running through the guy. And now I'm really thinking about AA, like Alcoholics Anonymous, what do we do? I throw my arm around him. Hey, that's a loving action, that's good, you know, and John's like squeezing the life out of my thigh, and I'm squeezing the life out of him, and we're just sitting there, these two guys full of fear. And I'm thinking about you, and I'm thinking about every kind thing you've ever done to me, and I'm thinking about the way you treated me when I was new and how you took me in when nobody else would have me. And I'm thinking about God, and it's all so confusing, and I hate this guy, and I'm trying to think of a loving thing to do, and I slide my hand down his back. Just slide my hand down his back. And I just keep doing that, and I'm thinking about AA, and I'm thinking about this, and I don't know any other way to explain this, but it seemed like every time my hand ran down John's back, just a little bit of the anger went away, just a little bit of the resentment went away, and just a little bit of compassion came in there. A little bit of empathy went in there. You know, and I was thinking about AA and everything you did for me, and all the love that you showed me, and that came through me, and it came through my hand, and I was stroking John's back, and John released his grip on my thigh, and he brought his hand over in his lap, and he dropped his head into my chest, and his breathing evened out, and he fell asleep in my arms. And I stroked John for another 10 or 15 minutes, and I gently laid him back on the pillow, and I left the room, and I had tears in my eyes, and I remember thinking, man, whatever was wrong with me and John is over now. And you did that for me. And let me tell you, I even got that wrong. I talked to my sponsor about that experience, and I said, isn't that great that I could do that for John? Isn't that great that I could give that gift back to John? That he didn't have to leave here thinking I hated him. And he said, Don, you even got that wrong. That wasn't your gift to John. That was John's gift to you. And I'll tell you, you know, that's the thing in Alcoholics Anonymous I always want to keep in mind. That, you know, there's so many things. When I get to come and do a thing like this and what I'm going to do tomorrow in AA, and when I take those calls from the guys I sponsor, and everything that I've ever had the honor and privilege of doing with you people, every moment that I spend with you, I'm better because of it. Whatever I do in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm rewarded tenfold. Every good thing in my life today is a direct result of my membership in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't take it lightly. Thank you so much for saving my life. It wasn't much of a life to save, but I'll tell you, it gave me a great new one. That's all I got.